What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Terror Table, a horror movie podcast that's presented by the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. I am one of your hosts. My name is Mitch Oliver, and with me, as always, I have...
I'm Boozy.
We have Boozy, and we are welcoming our friend and artist, Cody Charleston, as our third co-host for this episode for reasons that will become a little more obvious shortly here. But how are you doing, Cody, all the way from Melbourne, Australia?
I'm doing good, Mitch. How are you guys going?
It's a great day for all of us.
Cody, you're up early for this one, hey?
Yeah, it's currently 7:30, but I've kind of been up since about around 4:30, 5 o'clock, so...
Yeah, if you recognize Cody's voice, it's because he was on episode 208 with us, where we talked about all of the Ghostbusters movies. We talked about the video game, the real Ghostbusters TV series. How is the future looking over there?
Yeah, what's Sunday like?
It's cold in the middle of winter. Yeah, freezing. But kind of miss summer at the moment, so it takes a little bit to get used to, but so far so good.
I have a coworker from Australia, and she talks about winters there and how cold it is, and I just have no sympathy for you guys. I'm sorry, coming from Saskatchewan, Canada.
People think all of Australia is really hot when it's not. Like, Victoria's got the worst weather. We get like 4 seasons in one day. So
we're super happy to have Cody joining as our third co-host today, but the focus of this episode today will be on our very special guest. This guest played a massive role in all of our gateways into the horror genre. We mentioned his work on the very first episode we ever recorded of this show, almost 5 years ago now. And we have discussed the impact that his craft has had on us and horror fans countless times on our show. He's responsible for painting and illustrating pieces of artwork that have profoundly influenced an entire generation of young and impressionable minds, ourselves included. Simply put, his work rearranged our DNA into the horror-obsessed nutcases that we are now. He is the artist and illustrator for 60 out of 62 of the original run of R.L Stine's seminal work, Goosebumps, and it is our great honor to welcome Tim Jacobus to the Terror Table. Welcome to the show, Tim. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's quite an intro. I hope I can live up to this.
You already have. You showed up.
That's the number one rule for life. You show up, that's 90%.
Yeah,
exactly.
we brought the Australian guys a backup just in case, and then we'll just pretend none of this was going to happen.
That's the worst backup ever.
Well, Tim, we couldn't be more honored to have you join us today. I feel like I can speak for the three of us and most people listening in saying that your work was a precursor for our obsession into the horror genre, and your work is instrumental in our entry into this whole thing that we love so much. And it's clear from your work that you love and have a reverence for the imagery that you create. We just want to hear all about your journey and what led you here. So I think to get things started, could you take us back to your first memory with horror or maybe the first imagery that caught your attention?
We should honestly ask, are you even a horror fan, really?
Yeah.
Like,
it's funny. Like you say, here I am responsible for building the on-ramp for you guys to the horror highway. And I am probably the most unhorror guy that you've ever met. If I was your age when Goosebumps came out, I would have been the guy who went, nah, I'll look at the covers, but I'm not reading what's inside there. I was also the guy who would call his mom when I went to the horror movie at the movie theater and said, yeah, you got to come and get me. I can't do this. So, your horror fans are, who are watching are now just rolling over. I've killed the image 100%.
Oh, no. That's something that's actually pretty common among people who work in the genre. There's a lot of people who work in the genre who don't like it, but it's what makes it so good.
I have a theory for that. So I think because we're so taken by it or influenced by it, that we can identify with it when we're trying to get it down on, creating the images and getting them down on paper. So I think, we're arresting those demons, one at a time, getting them down on the board. And, I think because it's a sensitive sore spot that we can tap into that.
Got to mention with your mom coming to pick you up when you did go to horror movies. Are there any you remember from a kid that really scared you away from everything, or certain ones you can remember?
Sure,
art.
I've mentioned this before. The one that got me the most was I was real young. I was home. This was back when there was only 3 channels on the TV, and they were rerunning the old black and white Hunchback of Notre Dame. Okay. And there was something about that because the black and white always to me represented almost like a documentary. So there was more realism to it to me than even if it was in full color. Secondly, you had that odd relationship with the Hunchback character. You sympathized with him, but you were scared to death of him. And it made a real impression on me. And one of those ones where in the middle of the night, I was bumbling around my room and my father had to come in and go, all right, what's going on? And I had to replay it. I sat and watched it on the TV and, it was really bugging me. So that's one that stands out as one that I still remember. But then as I got older, the one that stands out, and only because it was so different and the acting was so unbelievable. And again, I'm not going to be pulling one out of the rarities, but The Shining. That just, it was just not what I expected when I got there. And that was more psychological of a thriller, less of a horror genre. And but the twists and turns, I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, and it's that theme of most of the horror that goes on is in between your 2 ears. That's where the real damage is, and that's where most of the horror goes on. There are bad things that happen in the world, but that's the one that fascinates me the most, is being attacked from the inside.
Okay. That's actually a wild answer. I love that. I was going to ask, since you mentioned having 3 channels growing up, like we had that, and it was called Farmer Vision, and like one of the channels was in French. And I know you grew up in New Jersey, right? So what was your equivalent of that?
No, so you had basically 2, 4, and 7, and they were all network channels. We didn't have a farmer channel. Then another channel would come on, but it was only on once in a while. That was channel 13. And that was more of the member supported TV, where that's where Sesame Street would be. And
so the good stuff was once in a while.
Right. And, and then you'd see the opera there and, nothing you wanted to watch as a kid.
Considering only having 3 channels, what struck you as a kid to make you want to become an artist and do it as a career?
Well, going back, the 3 channels on the TV, no social media, no computers, no videos, no color TV until I was probably 12. You were like, there was no distractions. You had to make your own entertainment. So drawing was just something that, I enjoyed doing. My father could draw, and I assumed everybody could draw because, it was part of what went on at the house. And he didn't draw professionally or as a hobby. He drew kind of as a matter of fact. We'd be sitting at the dinner table. He goes, "Oh, I'm going to build a deck on the back of the house, and it's going to look like this." And he would flip over the napkin and he would draw something in perfect perspective. And so I always thought of it as a tool for conveying thoughts. The other thing that was great was my best friend, who lived right next door, loved to draw too. And that was part of our day. Yeah, we'd go, play sports, play football, ride our bikes, go swimming. But then we'd also, when we felt like it, we would sit down and we would draw together. And as the years went on, we continued to do it together. We ended up going to art school together. And he's still in the art business. He went one way, I went the other way. He produces TV commercials, and I went into illustration. So we had Like it was just a common denominator in something that we did on a regular basis. Again, more about no distractions or trying to make your own entertainment than, if I grew up today, I don't know. I don't know if I would have started chipping away at those magical 10,000 hours that you have to get in to get better at something.
Completely understand with being friends with someone and then differing into like sort of different career ventures. For example, I got into tattooing when one of my friends got into building and design. So I completely agree with where you come from there.
So obviously you got into the art field because it's something I like to ask other artists. If the art didn't pan out, where do you think you would have gone?
Oh, probably a job I would have hated. Probably a trade.
Yeah, well, I also think a trade, but I don't know if I would have hated it. I think I would have worked with my hands. I hope I would have been, like a super fine cabinet maker or something like that where, got paid well, loved doing it. But I think working, the continuation of the idea of working with our hands, I think is something that, I could never see myself selling insurance or something like that.
Just don't ever choose plumbing. I can tell you that from personal experience.
I was going to say, if you can't build a cabinet, you can sure draw the hell out of one.
That's right. I know I could tell the cabinet maker what I want and give him a pretty good representation.
Considering with work stuff, when you did do a Goosebumps cover, were you working a regular 9-to-5 job, or was it just the hours just changed compared to the deadline?
Early on in my illustration career, there was multiple steps where you're trying to break in. I got lucky and got my first cover, but that was it. You got one cover and then you had to try to look for more. So I had a full-time job and I was doing the art on the side. Then I started to get a little bit more consistency. So I went to a part-time job and did my art on the other half of things. By the time I got to doing Goosebumps, illustration was my full-time thing. I didn't have to hold down a second. Well, my ex-wife worked as a bartender at a comedy club, and she was there Fridays and Saturdays. After a while, I used to go, I pick her up every Friday and Saturday, and then I started hanging out there because comedy clubs are fun. And I ended up getting a job there being the seater. So I was just doing that for fun. But yeah, I did that while I was doing full-time illustration. So I did have the luxury of when it was time to do a Goosebumps cover, it was all in.
What were the other jobs that you were doing around that time for illustration wise?
When I got, I ignorantly, when I got out of art school, just said, I'm not doing anything else other than book covers. I live in New Jersey. I'm less than an hour outside of Manhattan. And I thought, I don't need to do all these other steps that everybody's going to do. I'm just going to skip all this shit and go right to it. And, if I knew then what I know now, I probably would have taken a little bit more deferred path. But I took it on the chin, but it also, just kept me going. The very first book cover I did was for a company called DAW Books, DAW, stood for Donald A. Walheim. And Donald was one of the, pioneers of the science fiction genre. I'm pretty sure he was a writer as well, but he ran his own publishing company. He was old by the time I got there. This man was in his 80s. He was not, I don't want to say he wasn't nice. He was just a gruff old man. And he didn't, hold back on, how he felt. But it was easy. You knew if he liked something, you knew if he didn't like something. That was my first cover. I ended up doing 2 or 3 with him. It was great, and he wasn't controlling. You just turned in your stuff. He took you submitted sketches. He said he liked something. You turned it in. He'd say, yep, that's good. I like it. He didn't mess around with, oh, go take that back and redo this. And that's not how he ran his company. And that's not how most of the book business is done. Usually the book business, especially now, it's very committee oriented. So you're making changes to almost everything you do.
Has that, I guess that's kind of a loaded question for you, but like, how has the book industry changed a lot in that way with social media coming in and everything? Obviously,
I don't like sounding like okay, kids, gather around. I'm going to tell you the grandpa stories, but there's nothing about the book business is how it was when I started. So when I get, young people coming up and going, oh, tell me how you got started. It's like, well, it doesn't apply anymore. I could give you those basic things like, work hard and, follow up on your phone calls and look people in the, but that's the only stuff that applies. No social media, no digital art. Everything is tangible. Everything is traditional. So to show your work, you had to put it all in a portfolio case, carry it into the city, knock on doors, and present it to somebody. And then, or they had drop-off days where your portfolio and 40 other portfolios just like yours, big giant things, sitting in the hallway, and then somebody would review them and they would leave a note and you would pick it up and move it to the next publisher. So it was all hands-on, all clunky.
You feel like a vacuum salesman?
Yeah. There I am saying I didn't want to sell insurance, and I kind of was. We used to have a routine where I was still working, had a full-time job, and me and my ex-wife would get up and we would, so it's Monday. And Monday drop-offs were at, I'm making this up, but say they were at, it's at Scholastic. So we would drive in early in the morning and drop the portfolio off at Scholastic, and then drive home, go to work, go do whatever we're doing for the day. On Tuesday, we'd get up, we'd drive back to the city, pick up the portfolio at Scholastic and move it over to Daw Books and drop it off, and then get back in the car and drive home. And you would cycle them around till Thursday, and then Thursday you just pick it up and go home with it. We did that routine a number of times. Lots of time wasted in the car, lots of walking around, lot of, again, very clunky. The other side of it was I was in the game because I lived close enough to New York City. Now, there could have been, and there was, I'm sure, the greatest artist in the world who lived in Pittsburgh, but he can't get his ass in on a regular basis to show those publishers what they want to see. So my being physically located close to the city was a big factor in me being able to break into the business. So now that shit doesn't happen anymore. I could send my stuff to Australia and easily get somebody to look at it and do work and sends the digital files across with somebody who's new, who's starting. They have a whole new set of problems. So the new set of problems, one's not a problem. One is you can get your stuff out to almost anybody that you can get an address for, but so can anybody else. So where I was dealing with maybe, I think if I said there was a couple hundred artists back then, trying to look for work on a consistent, regular basis, it may have been that few. And while now I can't even imagine the onslaught of work that comes in to an art director's office on a regular basis from incredibly talented people from all over. So different game.
Yeah, the digital art game has seemed to be something that's obviously it's the future. It's what we're in now, and it makes the demand and everyone trying to vie for these same jobs. There's just always so many options. But obviously, whatever you did, you ended up landing with Scholastic. So could you tell us what that was like, going from working with Daw to Scholastic and doing these Goosebumps covers? Obviously, I can't imagine they would have known how huge of a cultural phenomenon Goosebumps would be.
Oh, no. So I had worked with Scholastic for a couple of years, and I had done mostly stuff in their young adult area. And they were mostly fantasy oriented, science fiction oriented. I was doing weirder stuff, but they always had, you had the professional kids that you could hire to pose for you, and always whoever was the main character in the book, you tried to put somebody on the cover that looked just like that character. Very traditional looking, kind of a formula for typical book covers back then. But no series work, just one-offs. And I got a number of covers from them. I couldn't tell you how many I had by the time Goosebumps came along. I had proved myself to be responsible, always there when the phone rang, got my work done on time. My work was consistent, so, it wasn't like, here's a really good one and here's one that looks a little sloppy, or, oh, it's kind of late. So when Goosebumps came along, you're right. Not only did they not know that it was going to be this really giant thing, I was told, R.L. Stine wasn't thrilled when it came along, and most of the people in there thought it was going to be a clunk, that it wasn't going to work because nobody had done horror for that age group yet. And there was literally no boy market. No boys were reading Scholastic books in the 90s that were from that age group. They didn't start to come in until they got a little bit older. So I have a memory. Now, I'm sure I'm paraphrasing and it wasn't quite presented to me exactly this way, but they said, listen, we've got this new series. We'd like you to do one of the covers here at the beginning. We don't think it's going to go anywhere. So if you would do this cover, we're not going to pay you the full price. We'd like to knock a couple of $100 off. But we promise you that, if, you take care of this, that will put you on something good. So the idea that Goosebumps wasn't something good was spelled out right there at the beginning. So I saw what it was, and I liked the idea that it was different, that it wasn't, let's put the two main characters on the cover. It was wild, got to do, everything was character oriented and creature oriented. And I was like, this will be fun. So, okay, I'll do one and let's see what happens. I did book number 1, Welcome to Dead House, which is, by the way, 30th anniversary this year. I did it in 91. It came out in 92. Another artist named Jim Thiessen did Stay Out of the Basement. Now, Jim was a more traditional horror guy, and they weren't sure if it was going to be me or him, but it wasn't like, oh, there's this, there's going to be these hundreds of books that are going to follow. It was like, yeah, there might be 2 more books that follow. The big fear was that the books would be too scary. And the real difference between my work and Jim's work was I was using all those saturated colors. And everybody saw that and went, oh, yeah, that definitely is less scary. And Jim had more, and still, he's a super artist, and his stuff had a more realistic flair to it, where mine, for a lack of better term, has a cartoonish edge to it. It's not ultra realistic. So it was those, especially the colors, that made them go, all right, yeah, let's go with Jacobus. I really wasn't sure what the whole idea behind Goosebumps was, because Welcome to Dead House was more of a traditional horror story. It wasn't until I got to Say Cheese and Die where all of a sudden I went, now I get it. We're having fun here.
It's a little more tongue in cheek.
Yeah, and there's there's a comic element to this. And this is now I get it. And once that hit, then I was like, all right, I'm on board. We just started to do them, and they weren't selling well at the beginning. There was talk behind the scenes about killing the series, and this was early on. So maybe 6 months in, 7 months in, the books weren't selling. Just before they said, all right, let's not do these anymore. You guys, again, no social media, no anything. We're just literally talking to one another going, you should check these out. Take a look at this. This is cool. Or
the Scholastic Book Fair.
And yeah, right. And they're being pumped. We were mainlining them into the schools.
as people who all like, I'm not sure, Cody, I don't even know if we talked about this, if you experienced this, but in Canada here, it was always like the Scholastic Book Fair. It just right away, Goosebumps is all I think of. And it's because we'd go in there and everyone, that was like my first phenomenon that I felt I ever lived through, where like Pokemon came out afterwards, where kids were just obsessive, but it was like we'd run to the Goosebumps section and would look at the covers, but most people would be too scared to actually read the books. But then there were people like, me, who like, I got into reading because of those books, and it was the covers that pulled me into it. And now I'm a writer. It's what I love about the art form. But yeah, the Scholastic Book Fair it's
Goosebumps. And that was something, the book fair was something that was kind of new. So Cody, did you guys have the book fair?
So we did have the Scholastic Book Fair, but I started school around the early 2000s, and that was at the time where Goosebumps had sort of started to slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, right, you're younger than us.
So I discovered Goosebumps having 3 older brothers who loved them because they were all early 90s kids.
Right.
But the way I found all new Goosebump books were through op shops, like secondhand bookstores, and that's my safe haven. But I did have the Scholastic Book Fair.
But the book fair was unique because you guys didn't have to go anywhere. We pumped the books into you, and you were getting out of your math class or your
we had like a whole
class.
Day dedicated to it. Yeah, it was the best.
Right. And you used to go down, and your moms and dads used to give you some money, and you could buy a calendar and some crazy thing and a couple of books. And what parent isn't going to give their kid some money for books? So that was a huge thing in getting the Goosebumps stuff in front of you guys. But then around book 9 or so, it just took off, and it took off like a rocket. You guys were gobbling them up, and that also worked for me as an artist, because once it started to go, to their credit, everybody at Scholastic said, all right, don't mess with this. This is working. So however Tim's been doing it, don't add or subtract from what he's doing. Nobody jumped in there and tried to make it better, or, there wasn't more people all of a sudden. They just let us do the thing. The other thing that helped from an artistic point of view was we were cranking those out. R.L's writing, the books were coming out once a month, no matter what. And, I have to make a cover. I have the easy job. R.L's got to crank out a whole book. That also kept people from messing with anything. It was like, okay, it's done. It's done on time. Looks good. We're putting that in production. Start the next one because we got to stay on top of this. And then there would be like, all right, this month, we're doing a calendar. So you got to do 2 this month. So get started on the calendar, and then you can stop that while you jump back to the covers. So again, people weren't getting nitpicky on any of the stuff that I was doing, which again, that was just, that was a godsend.
You had mentioned this before when you were talking about it, but I know Cody also wants to get to some stuff that's more intricate to actually art, because I don't know a ton about that. But I was just going to ask, have you ever had any, with Goosebumps, any of your covers rejected for being like too scary? I always remember as a kid, like Vampire Breath was really terrifying for me.
Funny story. So Vampire's Breath, I had to do, I was working on another cover for another publisher. And like I said earlier, they used to give us a budget to hire professional actors, young actors and actresses to be, pose for our book covers. We used to all go and use this same photographer. Her name was Addie Passon. She was an older woman. She was, she could have been my grandmother at the time. Very accomplished woman, had a great history, but also had good assistants. She had an assistant there named Michael, and Michael was from the UK. He hadn't been with her very long, but he was, again, he was running everything at that point. And so we shot kids in the morning. We got done, and, we were talking about Goosebumps. I said, hey, Michael, he's real tall, real lean, real angular looking guy. I said, yeah, come on, let's flip the camera out. I get behind the camera. I want you to, do, and I told him how I wanted him to pose. And so, yeah, it's Michael, the photographer that used to take pictures of the kids for me. And he got on the Goosebumps cover.
That's got to be a great story for him. He's like, got to tell everybody about that. That's
I only had one Goosebumps cover where they actually, again, these are traditional art paintings. So I would Federal Express them in. And there was only one that made the return trip back to my studio. That was Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes, because in the original, he was picking his nose. Now when you look at the cover, he's scratching his head. Everybody loved it when I turned it in. And, they're like, oh, that's hilarious. We love it. Let's go. And then somebody somewhere, higher up, because we were going directly into the schools, got a little cold feet and said, yeah, let's not send something in where the kid's picking his nose. That was it. Move the finger out of his nose and to the side of his head. That's the biggest change I had to do. But never, I knew the rules. So yeah, there's no red blood. Nobody, no kid is hurt. No, we're not doing anything really horrible. Nor were, the books just weren't set up that way.
Yeah, the books kind of reflect that. They always had kind of a tongue-in-cheek or, nice ending.
I'm trying to remember which one it was, but I remember getting one copy of a goose. It was one that had slime on the cover, and it came with like a little vial of slime. And I remember just being so over the moon about that as a kid.
Yeah, there was, after a while, there wasn't anything that we didn't try to throw that Goosebumps logo on and send your guys' way. I know there were glow-in-the-dark boxer shorts for a while.
Oh,
yeah.
I gotta check eBay, see if they still...
I got a chance to make the giant curly display, that I painted actual size so that they could put the underwear on them and set it up at the store. So,
I gotta pull up. I have my mom, our family has photo albums of all of us as kids and whatnot, like everyone does. One of my favorite pictures of me as a child is I was wearing a glow in the dark Goosebumps hat. And it was it was life changing for me.
Yeah, so, like you say, anything that glow in the dark, that was a home run every time.
Yeah.
Tim, going back to the traditional side of art stuff, I've read a few interviews that you used to jump between illustration board and also painting on Masonite wood.
Yes.
Do you have a preferred painting surface that you like to paint on at all, or do you kind of just mix between the two?
When I was doing the Goosebumps covers, they were always the Bainbridge number 80 illustration board. It was a consistent surface that I really liked, and I didn't have to do anything to it. I just, right out of the package, I didn't gesso it. I didn't do anything other than put that first coat of acrylic paint on it. When you're dealing with Masonite, you got to gesso that board. Then I'm usually sanding it to get the texture right, and too much work. So, I use that when I'm doing, I'll do it. I like using it now when I'm doing a fine art piece for somebody who's just going to hang it on their wall. And then, I have time for it and I can get this surface exactly the way I want it. So really out of just the necessity to go fast, I would say 95% of my book covers were that number 80 illustration board, which has got a little tooth to it.
Yeah, I remember downloading all the high-res covers when I was sort of studying art. And if I zoomed right in, you could see the actual fabric and tooth of the gesso board.
Yeah.
But how do you get your gradients so smooth with the backgrounds? Is it all airbrush, or do you just sit there with the normal paintbrush and just...
No, I did use an airbrush. I would say it was 80-20, 80% just niggling with the brush and making it happen with the Sable brush. But the airbrush is what I'm using for the gradients. I'll blow in a background, get the gradient in there real nice. And then because I was working with acrylics, I would paint the whole background in, put the gradient in, and then I would transfer more of the painting onto the board. So if there was a mountain range next, I would just then apply the mountain range, paint the mountains, and then take then bring my drawing back again, lay it over top, and transfer down, the main character, the wolf, whatever it's going to be in the painting, and put that over top. So I was constantly building up layers on the illustration board. It wasn't like I transferred the whole thing down and painted around things.
Yeah, wow. See, that blows my mind. I can't paint layer by layer, especially acrylic. I've tried acrylic. I just can't do it. It dries way too quick for me.
Yeah, so I am the most unlikely guy to be doing this. So even when I was a little kid, my hands shake. I got terrible. My hands are not steady at all. So when I work, I like to have my hand down on the surface that I'm working on. Anything else that I used in art school, watercolor, oil paint, any of that stuff, as soon as you put your hand in it, either it's ruined or it's on your hand. So the acrylic was, it would dry nice and fast, and then I could lay my hand down on it. And the other thing I liked about it is any color can cover any color in acrylic. You make a mistake, you might have to put white on first and block it out, but you can get that other color over top, where almost anything else, there was a point of no return. Watercolor being the most unforgiving. Like, you could only get so much down, and then you got to live with that. Where the acrylic, I could spill, I could mess something up, and I could sand it, and I could patch it, and I could spray over. I could always save it. There was never a piece of art that was destroyed. I actually, if you think it dries too fast, normally I painted with a hair dryer in my left hand, so that I would paint and I'd hit it with the hair dryer so it would dry, and then I could go in again and I would hit it with the hair dryer. So and I liked it. I liked it dry. I liked that whole thing about it, that it dried fast. And it was something that I took on early, before I actually really knew what I was doing. I picked up this technique when I was in art school. So from the time I was 17, I just started making this thing work. Yeah, acrylics is one of those things where you got to get into it early, and you figure out how to make it work for you after. It just takes a little longer. Oil painting's nice. Oil painting's great. Like, you can go back and smooth that edge, 4 days from now. You can go back to a couple of year-old piece and smooth that edge. So what are you working?
Basically, my process is a little bit different towards a few traditional artists, what they do. I kind of paint in this way a drawing would happen. So I'll paint, if I'm doing a portrait, I'll start with an eye and I'll completely finish that eye. And then I'll go off to the other eye and I'll completely finish that eye. And then I'll go to the nose, mouth, and go from there instead of painting it layer by layer. I've tried like painting by layers, but I feel like it makes me too scatterbrained. I don't know. It's just the way I work is a little different, but I tip my hat to people who paint with layers though, especially with acrylic.
Wow. So do you work up your is there a sketch beforehand so that you have it all laid out and you transfer it down and then do that? Or are you just going, here's an eyeball and I'm finishing it, and then here's another eyeball? Because if you can do that, that blows my mind. That almost seems impossible.
I'll send you some photos of some progress stuff, but I do not use a drawing at all. Wow. Or a reference. I usually just do dot points to get the proportions right.
Okay. All right. So there is.
So say if like I'll start with, I want to get like, say it's like a normal portrait sort of with like the shoulder up. I will do like the dots where the eyes, nose, and like ears go. So it'll be like the dots sort of horizontal, and then that's all I just go off.
Wow.
I want to add a little quick fun fact here, though, Tim, is so we are from Canada. Cody's in Australia. The way that we became friends with Cody was we did an episode on some Goosebumps, just a Goosebumps topic discussion. And,
I think we covered some of the episodes of the TV series.
Yeah. But then Boozy found this oil painter on Instagram, and he was doing the Haunted Mask cover and he was doing various Goosebumps covers with and painting them. And that led us to Cody's Instagram account, and we become like really good friends ever since.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And now Cody's I know you're the type of guy who will never give yourself a pat on the back, Cody, but Cody's now a tattoo artist who's putting the covers of Goosebumps on people for the rest of their lives.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's very surreal that I'm tattooing covers on people now. And from someone who's spent
It's weirder for me.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, it's like, you know, people can look at my work and say, oh, well, you do realism and it's a bit of a different style to sort of your pop surrealism. But if you put my portraits next to, let's say, Girl Who Cried Monster or Piano Lessons Can Be Murder, and you look at those skin tones, I've still got the same skin tones that you have with your work. Mine's only just converted to realism. So I still have those purples and pinks and oranges.
Yeah.
So
the filling in the shadow sides, you know, like that's kind of, that was something that, you know, I learned in school, but I really like leaned into where, so, you know, like you say, you got skin tones going and then you get into the shadows. Most people just make them dark. And it's when you start to add those other colors, maybe blues, maybe purples in the shadow side, that's where they're the most vibrant and effective, because people are just used to seeing it go dark or go black.
Yeah, and with the painting side of things too, did you just use basic Liquitex for your acrylics?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I still get all my brushes from like the cheapest places ever, and they still work a treat.
There's a art school that's somewhat close to here. It's called the Joe Kubert Art School, and it's a comic book school. And any comic book artist is now, they're going out of their mind because it's one of the best comic book schools there is. But they have a nice little art shop. Yeah, I spent some money on brushes. I was using some pretty good Sable brushes, and I could only get through one painting, and they would be beat up pretty well. So new brush, new job.
I normally just buy like a whole bunch of cheap ones, and they sort of seem to do the trick to like what the expensive ones do over with my time of painting. I've got some. I don't know if America, you guys have a brand called Monty Mart.
I don't know that one, no.
But they're like a really cheap sort of Home Depot brand. And I've got brushes of them for nearly 8 years ago that still work a treat for blender brushes. Like, it's just crazy, compared. And I really like that you...
I get that, because you get comfortable with a brush. And, see, the problem with here's what would happen to the Sable brushes. So for anybody who's listened, Sable is fox hair. And there's a natural oil in the hair itself when you get it. It's an amazing, I don't know how they make them. It's just a beautiful brush. So if when I'm working with acrylics, you got to make sure that you don't get any paint up in where the bristles of the brush meet the top, because that's when it starts to destroy the brush. And what ends up happening is I used to use lacquer thinner as an acrylic dissolver. I would stick my airbrush in there because it was the only thing that once acrylic dries, it's plastic, and it's solid plastic. So the acrylic lacquer thinner would break it down and turn it, into something that you could wipe off. And eventually with my my Sable brushes, they'd end up in the lacquer thinner because they would get too much paint on them. And once the lacquer thinner got on those brushes, all the natural oil that was in the fibers and the Sable itself would dry out, and then the brush would kind of lose all its, all those really good qualities. So I couldn't get them to last for more than a single painting.
I try and avoid the very top of the brush, especially considering I'm painting and like breaking down oil with turpentine, which is like sort of paint thinner.
Yeah,
the fumes are just ridiculous. So
let
alone
lacquer thinner is even worse. So I'm sure somewhere, I'm sure that's where all my hair went.
Oh, same here. I was gonna say we have the same haircut.
Yeah, who's your guys' barber?
That's it. That's the one thing about this hairstyle. You can self-inflict.
Yeah, never have to pay for a haircut again.
And it never goes out of style.
What size do you usually work?
So I've just jumped up to, with dimensions, 50 to 72 centimeter.
Okay.
Normally I was really shy with going anything bigger than A3, but I've just started going a little bit bigger. So I don't think I want to get any bigger than this and do like a mural, but I feel like my sweet tooth for dimensions is that 25 to 35 centimeter sort of range. But you painted the Goosebump books 20 by 20 inch, is that correct?
Yeah, it's correct. So again, going back to that 80 illustration board, basically if you cut it in half, you would end up, they were 30 by 40. So you cut it in half, I got a 20 by 30. And if I was doing a traditional, a normal book cover is, that 4 by 7 proportion. So I would leave that 30 inches and then they were 20, 30. But Goosebumps, we were doing square. So I'd cut that 10 inches off. So yeah, they were 20 by 20. I got it just, again, it was economy of product. I didn't want to cut extra. I cut it in half and take the top off of it, and now we're ready to go.
Yeah, I haven't tried sizing down canvases. I tried framing a canvas once by taking it out of the actual canvas frame, because I'm all canvas fabric.
Yeah.
And I ended up screwing up the whole painting and had to get someone else to fix it.
Yeah, we used to. So it was cool when I went to art school because they made us do all kinds of stuff like that. We had to stretch our own canvases, and you got used to doing things, but that stuff was a nightmare. Yeah, stretching canvases, and once they're there, you got to leave them there because they can become a mess real fast, and you never quite get them back again. I have recently been trying to work bigger because I got so used to doing that 20-30 or just the 20 by 20 and doing all the same thing. So I've been doing some black and white pieces, and I have one that hangs up in my living room that's 2 feet by 7 feet. So I kind of gave myself an odd size to work with and worked as big as I could. And that's nice because, I like the idea of standing while I'm working and walking up to it and walking back, and, bigger brush strokes instead of, that hunched over, getting into all the very minor details. This way you're kind of doing a much broader piece, and it was a nice change.
That was the one thing I struggled with doing bigger dimensions, was the walking back and walking forward and standing. And so I'm normally a sit hunched down artist.
Yeah.
So
right.
That was the struggle.
Yeah.
But that's awesome.
It's fun. Yeah. It's, again, I'm sure if I did that for a really long period of time, meaning I did, 2 years worth of paintings all in a row, I'd probably be going, I can't wait to sit down again. So again, it was just the break of the normal or the typical routine. Just get out of my own head, get out of my own way, and do something a little bit different. Working with black and white as opposed to all the carnival of colors that I used on Goosebumps was nice.
If someone was to learn how to paint in acrylics, but really sort of didn't know where to start, what advice would you give them?
Well, you threw me a curveball with the way you work, because I'm going to tell them to do everything that you said you don't like doing. So,
that's absolutely fine.
I would say, to start off, work smaller. Don't bite
Absolutely.
off. There's no need to do anything huge. Get a smaller canvas. 8 by 10 is fine. Something small, and just get used to the how the colors work. If you're like, if you have a background in watercolor and oil and you're used to, you can slow down the drying time of acrylics by using some of the mediums and not gesso. I can't remember, but there are some stuff that slow it down a little. Get used to, working edges and think of it more like, doing layers and thin it out and use it maybe more like watercolor at first, and then build up on top of that, and then go opaque as you start to get everything laid into place. See, the way I learned to paint was exactly the opposite from the way you work, where you're trying to get everything, just kind of blocked in and keep it, stay loose at the beginning and then begin to tighten it up as you move closer to finish. The idea when our teachers were teaching us this was be able to leave some, like if you run out of time, you can leave some things looser that are unimportant that may be, over here in the corner, but you can tighten everything up in here and get that job done. Whereas if you've committed to, everything's tight, then you backed yourself into the corner. It's probably a lot like, like if you teach yourself to play the guitar, you're lefty and you string the guitar for the left hand. And that's how you taught yourself. And that's how you know how to do it. You can't then go to somebody else and go, all right, well, I play lefty. Show me, now make this work for me. It's like, well, whatever you're comfortable with. And, you have your way of working. And if that's how you're comfortable, don't ever stop. No matter what anybody tells you, don't ever change the way you do it. I had some teachers that told me that I was too tight, that I should loosen up. You're too tight. You're too tight. You're too tight. And I was always like, yeah, but that's what I like. And
if it ain't broke, don't fix it,
Yeah. And then you just go, well, I'm going to do what I like because that's what this is all about is, making sure at least, and the finished product, like I could reel it in. So if I was doing an assignment for that teacher and they said, please leave it loose, I could leave it loose on that assignment and turn it in and be done with it. But if I was doing something for myself or what I was considering my style, I'm going back to making it tight again. And just do with any creative thing. Do what makes you the happiest. Do what you like to do. Do what you do best. Don't listen to anybody else. Just because you have to enjoy what you're doing and please yourself first. Because if you don't do that, then you're never going to please anybody else with it, and you're going to be miserable. So, reel it back in and do what works best for you.
I believe that if you're passionate about something, you're going to excel a lot quicker compared to if you're doing something you're sort of half interested in doing.
Yeah.
So I absolutely agree with that. And I just started going down that sort of side of teaching people with like one-on-one clients with oil painting. And I always say start small because you don't want to, that was my problem. So I basically made every mistake a beginning oil painter did. So I know not like what not to do. And I think going big first is just gonna, as you said, corner yourself and
because now you've committed yourself to this big thing. And if it doesn't work out, you've put in so much time on something big, and there's a lot more opportunity to, like, you could have a nice little section that's working great and then blow it over here. So like you say, stick small at the beginning, get comfortable, and rip through them. And you can always listen. I have some really small paintings that I did that were just color comps that I went back to and tightened them up, and they look real nice hanging on the wall too.
I always get them to start with painting a ball and then have like the light source hit the ball and the dark part of it. And everyone goes, oh, that's ridiculous. And it's like, well, you learn like 80 things. Like you learn light sources, color, tone, mixing, everything with just this little ball. And it's the best thing to do. But this looks so silly from someone who doesn't paint.
We did that at art school. We had the cone, the block, and the ball. Yeah. And it sat on the black tablecloth, and they would wheel it in the room. And it's like, okay, now draw that.
I have a couple quick questions for you that don't directly go towards the art style. So I'm going to pull you away for a sec here. So I know way back you had done a cover for a Star Trek game.
Yeah.
And I also know that you recently did a cover art for, and they kind of sound like an 80s band to me, like Ravage. I don't know a ton about.
Oh, yeah. They're 90s band. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm just kind of curious, like, are there any other, like, I know a lot of people would kill to work on Star Trek anything. Is there any other like genres or musicians even that you'd love to do artwork for? Maybe Pink Floyd, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that would obviously, but that's not going to happen. we've lost
Yeah.
too many members of that. And also the band. So there was an illustrator named Roger Dean who did all the covers for the band. Yes,
I actually looked that up. I read one of your
yeah,
interviews
definitely
about
look it up.
Yeah.
So with his artwork, Roger Dean's was what got me thinking differently about my artwork. So up until then, it was very traditional, draw what you can see, and try to copy what you could see, whether it was from photographs or real life or whatever. Roger Dean's artwork is not real. It's stuff that
It's very fantastical. I was checking. Yeah.
Right. And it made me go, oh yeah, that's better. Like, then it was like, okay, put something real in with something that's not real. And now I'm getting things to work. Doing a cover for the band, yes, that'd be a home run.
Okay.
But it's fun to do pieces like that because it's good exposure. Like you say, I've been lucky to do. Again, it's funny that I did some albums early on in my career, then everything went to CD, and album covers were they got done, but not very often, and they were pretty low budget. And now vinyl's a big thing again, and I get more album cover requests now than I do book cover requests.
That's actually really cool. Have you?
It's absolutely. I love it.
You found any new favorite bands that way?
Well, what's cool is a couple of, so you guys are all of an age, and now you grew up on Goosebumps, but you're doing your own thing now. You're grown up, you're men, and a lot of you are in bands. A lot of you are writing your own books. A lot of you are art directors at ski companies, and every email starts the same way. Hi, Tim. I was a big Goosebumps fan. I got this project. Do you want to be part of it? So, you guys are my new employers. It's awesome.
That's kind of an interesting question. I know you have an art book that came out in the late 90s that was called A Day in the Life, or I think it was called It Came from New Jersey.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I know you're from New Jersey. Is that a big part of you always got to rep New Jersey? And my other question with that is, are you a Devils fan?
So two parts to that. There was a book that was called It Came from Ohio First, and that was R.L. Stine's autobiography. And it did pretty well. And we reached out to Scholastic because this is when, we're doing glow in the dark underwear. So it was like, hey, how about, we do, a book called It Came from New Jersey. And we, because I was doing this program at schools where I'd go and talk to middle school kids, 10-year-old kids, and tell my my life story, so to speak. They were like, yeah, why don't we do that? So the thing that distinguishes that book is we wanted to print full color art in there. And a Goosebumps book, as you know, the paper in there is pretty, it's bottom line. So in order to keep the price the same, we could only put in half as many pages so that we could print, photographs and art and everything else. So yes, I have the dubious distinction of being the absolutely shortest Goosebumps book ever written. I wrote it in long form, longhand, and then they gave it to an author named Tracy West, and she turned it into something acceptable. But they did such a limited run on that book is crazy rare now. And if you look on Amazon,
I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, look on Amazon, the price is outrageous. And it fluctuates wildly. It can be up there for like $400, and it's a cheap paperback. I bought it for 25 cents when it was on the backside of its popularity. So yeah, do not spend 3-digit anything for that book.
I managed to grab a copy a few years ago, and I think it was easier finding a first. So I collect a lot of older sort of first edition books, mainly Stephen King.
Yep.
And it was actually easier for me to find The Shining than it was to find your book, first edition. But I didn't buy it for $400.
And what was funny about it is when it came out, I didn't think of saving any, like I just gave them all out to friends and family, and and then, like I said, you could find it, you could get it on Amazon, and the price kept coming down, and there was a time there for a while where the shipping was more expensive than the book itself. Slowly but surely, it starts to become rare, and I'm glad you got a copy. I have one copy, but it's used, and it's from like an old school library, and it has the little card catalog thing in there where they used to put the punch card in there. Yeah.
You have I know you had little to do with the Art of Goosebumps book that came out a couple of years ago.
Yep.
But that's obviously has to have been something that was pretty exciting to see all of your work represented in one.
Oh, absolutely.
Beautiful cohesive book.
So it started years ago that they were going to do it. And it was on again, off again, on again, off again. And the publisher ended up reaching out to this book designer named Mark McNabb. What they didn't know is Mark McNabb is one of my closer friends. He was there when my son was born. I went to the hospital when his daughter was born. We've known each other for over 30 years, but they didn't know we knew each other. He called me up and said, "Hey, did you know that this publisher is trying to do a book on you?" And I was like, "Yeah, and I'm kind of like blowing it off going, "Yeah, we've been talking about it for years. I don't think it's happening. It's kind of fallen through the cracks." And he goes, "Well, they want me to do it." And I was like, "Well, all right, if you're into it and you're doing it," and I've seen the books that he designs. I was like, "All right." I said, "We'll head up to the attic," because I saved everything. I saved all the files, all the folders. And that's why when you see the book, there's all the original sketches are in there, only because Mark took them home, went through the hundreds of hours to sort through them, to scan them all and get them ready to be put in the book. And when it got done, he was like, "All right, I'm going to send the book to you, and I want you to go through it and tell me what you want to change." And I was like, "No." I was like, "That's you did everything. You did all the work. I want this to be your interpretation of my work. It doesn't need to be me going, 'Oh, change that. That's not right. I don't like it.'" The hell with it. That just do it. Yeah. So it came out really nice. But to your point, what's really cool is all of it is in one place now.
Yeah.
And instead of going, "Yeah, there's literally hundreds of Goosebumps books, go look for them all and see if you can put them all together." And, now here they all are in one under, a nice oversized book.
Yeah.
And it's nice.
It's essential for any Goosebumps fans. Absolutely. It's a beautiful little book there. Love that thing. I do know Boozy did ask, and I got to know, are you a New Jersey Devils fan?
Oh, sorry. That's right. I forgot to get to that part of the story.
We're Canadians.
So I'm 63, and the Devils are the new team. Okay. The Rangers are the real team.
Okay.
So when the Devils came along, they were the new kids, and they sucked when they first came here.
Still do.
And you couldn't, it was so hard to get Ranger tickets, but you could get tickets to see the Devils any night you wanted. And the place would be empty, and it would be so quiet, you could hear their skates clicking on the ice when they were playing. But, I do like them. I follow them, of course. I mean, I'm a Ranger fan, but I'm not a Devils hater. I like them. They're the other home team. They have since moved out of here, and they've moved into Newark. So the much nicer arena than they were at when they first started. The
important thing is you're a hockey fan.
Well, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I guess we'll have to say, since you're a Rangers fan, is boo to the Pens right now.
Yeah. Boy, they were fighting it out at early triple overtime earlier.
Yeah, that was an awesome game.
I think we're going to do one last general question, and then we're just going to start wrapping things up here. We have a message from a listener that we promised that we'd share. And this seems like kind of a lazy question, but I am just curious. Do you have a favorite Goosebumps cover that you've done? Like, when you think of Goosebumps, is there one that comes to mind that's yours? Because we're going to tell you ours.
So
whether you like it or not.
No, that's cool. No, I'm actually more interested in that because there are certain covers that rise to the top when people start to talk about their favorites. But every once in a while, there's one where I go, wow, I like that one too. But no one, there's ones that no one ever says. Mine changes on a regular basis. So I have I have a top 10, and depending on how I feel or what's inspired me at the time, especially when we were putting that Art of Goosebumps together, we were going through files and rescanning stuff, and all of a sudden you got to look at all of them again, where, I don't bring them up while I'm working on something new. And though it will change from time to time.
Give us one.
I'm going to give you one.
It's got to,
yeah. While six are flowing, they're fighting for attention in my head.
What's the flavor of the week for you?
Flavor of the week I'm going to go with Egg Monsters from Mars.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for it is when it came up, and he said, "Yeah, it's an egg, and it's But I was like, is it giant? No, it's not giant. I'm like, but it's just an egg. And I'm going, there's nothing scary about a freaking egg. What am I going to do here? And so I like that one. And I love the way it came out because it was, we did the warped perspective in the kitchen, and, it is disgusting as it sits in the egg carton. So it was something that took me a while to kind of get my head wrapped around and find the scary in that one. Yeah. All right, let's go. I want to hear.
All right, who wants to go first? Should I lead off?
Sure.
All right. So I'm curious to hear what you think of this. Like, my favorite one is Deep Trouble.
Oh, wow.
And that's my second favorite.
Wow.
Yeah, but for me though, it was like I had seen the cover for Deep Trouble and had that book before I saw it. My favorite film of all time is Jaws.
Yeah, so there you go.
It makes sense that one really had a big impact.
And we kind of played off,
totally.
We kind of played off of that as well.
But the difference was I was a little boy at the time. I wasn't this girl in a bikini on the cover of Jaws. So
there you go.
The inclusion of the hammerhead shark was which is still an underrepresented shark in the horror subgenre.
Yeah, I had to do my homework on that to get the hammerhead right. And there's I'm trying to remember. It was a friend of mine's son, and we were trying to, because I can draw okay, but whenever I put a human figure in my art, I like to use some photo reference, because if I just draw it, they're going to come out cartoonish, which is fine. But if you can get a little realism in there, that makes the rest of it all that much more convincing. So I remember bringing his son over and getting him up on a ladder, and he's sitting on a ladder, and and I got down low so I could get that angle of his arms and his legs. And that's a good one. That one does not come up often. I right now.
And we each did top 5, so I'm just gonna fire through because we each have 5, but Ghost Beach is a very close second.
All right,
very close second. Love that one, and I know Cody recently tattooed that on someone, and I was just drooling over it because I would love that piece on me.
Wow.
Love Ghost Beach. The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb is probably the most iconic for me, and thinking of the Scholastic book fairs and going into the library, or anytime I saw Goosebumps, that the little glowing red eyes on that mummy are amazing. Werewolf of Fever Swamp was the first werewolf I was exposed to. And that's a huge, Boozy and I pretty much developed our friendship over a love of werewolves. So Werewolf of Fever Swamp probably predates everything. And my last one, obviously, Haunted Mask. Haunted Mask is legendary. And that was where we met Cody. was he did a haunted
Yeah.
mask painting. So Boozy, do you want to tell us your favorite?
Yeah, so I like Mitch had mentioned about the tattoo, because I wanted a tattoo of this as well, is Ghost Beach.
Wow.
Huge. Deep Trouble as well. Mitch, you mentioned Werewolf in Fever Swamp, so I thought I'd just keep it off my list just to have other things to talk about.
Yeah.
So I really like You Can't Scare Me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Werewolf Skin. And I actually have kind of a question about this last one real quick. In Night of the Living Dummy 3,
Yes.
did you like, that's the one that has the whole family in it?
Yeah.
Did they give you an idea of what the family was going to look like beforehand, or you just had to come up with the?
No, they had. There was, so as we moved through the series, I got less and less details about what was going on, because
Right.
RL was really fighting to stay up with stuff. So no, it was just, there's a family. They didn't say how many. They didn't say what they look like.
Right.
And there's one that I ended up putting a gap in his teeth because I thought it started to look like David Letterman. And yeah, so there's one in there that I was going, yeah, we're going to lean into making him look a little bit more like Letterman.
Do you think that any of the covers, like that one specific, impacted RL writing in the future? He's like, well, shit, now I got like 8 fucking dummies here.
No, so what he did tell me was, as we did get, so the way it would work is he never saw, he was writing, I would get a short synopsis from him. Early on, I would get, maybe a chapter. Then as we moved along, maybe I would get a paragraph. And then after a while, it was like 2 sentences. This is what the book is about. And they never included him in any of the decision-making process of what was going to be on the cover. So he never saw sketches. And then all he would see is the final product. And, he could be wherever he would be through writing the story. And as we moved, he told me that in the later one, as we moved along, he would do certain parts, but he would leave gaps in the detail, and he would wait until he saw the final artwork, and then he would see what details I put in the final artwork, and then he would incorporate them back into the story. So I know that didn't happen a lot, but I know it happened a couple of times.
My number one is easily Haunted Mask. I don't know. I just, every time I look at it, the longer I look at it, the more I just see in it. Just the highlights, odd forearms with the airbrush gives it that real glowy effect. Just kills me every time. I've painted it, studied it. I've painted it wrapped in plastic for like a still.
Oh, I saw that
before.
piece. That blew my mind. I saw that
Thank
before
you.
we met, and I think I commented on it, but no, that was because at first I'm going, I don't get it. I thought it was legitimately the book wrapped in plastic, and then I finally went,
I hate it. I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I didn't hate it. I was just going, well, just open it,
Take it out. Come on.
Just open it, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
But,
No, I just got, I don't know. I follow an artist that does a lot of stuff wrapped in plastic, and I was like, I want to do that, but with stuff from my childhood that I loved. So I've done like video game stuff, but the first thing I had to do was I definitely had to get the plastic painting down pat. So then when I knew how to sort of paint it and render it as a painting, I had to do a Goosebump book. And cool. Haunted Mask was the first one to come to mind.
That's cool.
Yeah. I'll quickly run off my top 5, but 2, Piano Lessons Can Be Murder. Just love the skin tones and the hands. Scared me as a kid with the hands being severed.
Yeah, but what I liked about that was they didn't want them to be, like jagged or torn, like it's just a clean cut, and you can't see that side of it. Like you don't see bone, you just see the 2 hands floating.
That makes it scarier, I think.
I like that piece. That was one of the ones where I'm, like we went back and forth, and I was like, well, okay, I guess this will be scary. And then it wasn't until I got into the painting and did the final rendering where I started to go, oh yeah, this is working. This will be okay.
Yeah, awesome. Then there's like Ghost Beach, and then Living Dummy, the first one. But last but not least, the Headless Ghost, because Same thing with the Girl Who Cried Monster. The use of your backgrounds use very minimal, use less colors, but darker for like the backgrounds. So with your background, you can see up in the last upper staircase, it's just like blues and purples and like that's it. But when you get close to the foreground, the more detailed in colors, you know, you got your oranges and browns. I just really enjoyed how the way you did that, especially the same with what you did with the Girl Who Cried Monster with all the bookshelves.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, was a technique that was impressed on me and really hit home where a lot of times you tried, as things were farther off in the distance, an easy one to look at and see this is a Deep Trouble 2, which has got the giant mutant goldfish in it. But the things that are farther away are less vivid and they're middle values, and as things get closer, they get lighter and they get darker. So you get lighter lights and darker darks as you move forward. And then on your main image that's in the foreground, you want your whites and your real darks are there. And that gets all that depth in the painting. And you save all those pure saturated colors for that stuff that's right there in the foreground. And then it just gives it that extra depth. And like I said, that was something that was impressed upon me, or that was kind of hammered home at art school, and it really, it stuck. And I always was trying to make that happen in all of my paintings.
Awesome. And another thing too as well is I've been a Converse guy my whole life because of your work. So I've never worn anything else. Those are two of the things that I still am fascinated by. One is that, here's all these years later, Converse sneakers are still popular. They still look pretty much the same. They're doing some other cool stuff, but for the most part, it's still the same Chuck Taylors. And here we are talking about Goosebumps. This should have been over too, and it's not over. So those two things amaze me. It just amazes me.
Before we let you go here, Tim, we just a couple of wrap up things. We have a message that it's a little bit of a longer message, so I'm going to read it for you, but it's from our friend Sebastiano, who he's an artist himself. He did the logo for the Terror Table for us. He also just finished. He just did the poster art for my first short film that's coming out, and he's a huge Goosebumps fan and a big fan of yours. So I told him I'd read this. So this is coming from Seb. He says, I think creative people are naturally very sensible to art from a very young age. You don't realize how much of an imprint everything you see and consume can truly shape your personality and tastes. And I think deep down, any artist just dreams, consciously or not, to get that one moment when one thing they create can connect with other people and make them feel the way that they felt back when they saw a piece of art that they also connected with. That it's the book you picked off the shelf, the skateboard you wanted more than anything else, the VHS tape art that made you pick the movie up, the album artwork that made you want to buy the CD, the poster in your older cousin's room that you'll never forget, that logo you drew clumsily on everything, etc. You can be 40 and see a piece of art you had a connection with when you were 12, and instantly you're in that time and space again. It's that powerful. You were able to create not one, but countless pieces of art that will unquestionably live on and inspire God knows how many people to pick up those books, and inspired artists to find their own voices. I am one of those artists who were lucky enough to get to make a living and to get to live some of his dreams through art. And I just want you to know that you are 100% part of the reason that happened. Your art truly shaped a part of my life. So I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of my journey. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of countless other artists out there. Thank you, Seb.
He needed to get,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But I know what he means. As soon as he was saying that, I was sitting on my couch with my Yes album, staring at Roger Dean's artwork and just going, this is amazing, and how much it influenced me, and how when I look at that stuff now, I'm sucked right back. It's a time warp. It takes you back there. The music and the art And I think of driving around in my car with a cassette player, listening to the music and thinking about, all those times. So I think that's part of the Goosebumps thing, is it brings you guys back to a time that you remember fondly, and you must have had okay childhoods, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be, or maybe you use Goosebumps as an escape. But that's very humbling. I'm kind of flabbergasted here.
That's so small. And Seb's also a huge New Jersey Devils fan. So I just had to get that out.
You inspired that as well. You wanted to look at where you lived and be. Yeah, I kind of just want to mirror those kind of sentiments in our own way, because unfortunately I'm a terrible artist, but I feel like the reason I am where I am today and have the weird horror tattoos and the things I like, and I'm sure once again I speak for a ton of other people, is I don't know if you ever realize how big, I know you're not a huge horror fan, but how big of an impact you have had and continue to. Like, my little cousin is 12, I think, and he's really into Goosebumps right now, and it's like those classic covers he always has too. He hasn't bought any of the new ones, but it's like stuff like, I hope you realize the kind of impact you made on a community and generations. Even
for the longest time I didn't, I knew I did my job well when the series was there, and I did as many books that weren't Goosebumps that were, and they come and go and nobody remembers them. And there's pieces that when you did okay and maybe they connected, but for the most part you're just connecting with yourself and just going, okay, I'm a craftsman, I got it done. It's just been what's been going on lately, because so it's different when I would do a book signing in the 90s and you guys would show up and you'd be 11 years old and you'd be excited and tell me that you think something's cool. Well, that's great, but I'm a 30-year-old man at that point, and I'm going, that's nice. And it was nice. This is so much cooler. You guys are grown up now and we can talk on the same level. And the fact that you guys still like it and appreciate it, and it did mean more than just the cover of the book. It's mind-boggling. So I'm a late comer to realizing that this was bigger. They always told me numbers, but numbers don't mean shit. It's this kind of stuff where talking to you guys or going to a convention and talking to people face to face, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
I just want to say too, as well, with all that.
Here comes more.
Get ready.
My head keeps getting bigger. I don't know if it's going to keep fitting.
I don't know if I'm going to be able
screen.
to top what Seb said, but yeah.
Yeah, it's tough to come after that one, hey?
Yeah, that was big. That was an Oscar-worthy speech. Being a kid growing up in a small country town where art wasn't frowned upon, but it was also it's very blue-collar job. So art's sort of the thing where teachers sort of teach you, they go, yeah, you can teach art, but you won't make any money from it. Seeing your illustrations as a kid made me realize, holy crap, this guy makes a living doing art. And without seeing those books, I honestly wouldn't be the artist I am today. So I just want to say thank you so much, Tim, for inspiring
That's cool,
me.
And it's funny because that was how I grew up too. My dad was a pharmaceutical manufacturer. He worked in a big factory, and he was very good at what he did. And when I said I wanted to be an artist, he wasn't thrilled. That didn't make sense to him. That was just, it was a foreign thing. And my guidance counselor in high school was like, hey, art's what I like. Well, yeah, you could teach. And that's all they would say is you could teach. And luckily along the way, I ran into the right people. And again, I go back to that ignorance thing. I thank God I just didn't know better and just said, oh, I'm going to do this. I think I can do this. And, luck is a big factor. And I was lucky enough to be that guy who got the chance to do it. And thank goodness I didn't screw it up.
Well, you definitely didn't screw it up.
No,
because,
definitely.
Yeah, if it wasn't for you, I'd definitely, probably be working a desk job. So,
the two things that I really love when people say it is that the art on the Goosebumps turned them on to doing something creative, whether it was writing or being an artist themselves. But the other one, which I never even thought of in a million years, even though I was getting into the book business, was so many people said I was a shitty reader or I was doing poorly in school. Goosebumps came along, and that's what taught me to read. And I never thought of that at all as a thing, that my art would somehow contribute to the actual reading. And
100%. I'm a living testament of that. Actually, I had trouble reading as a kid,
and I can die a happy man going, yeah, I taught some kids to read, and and people found the spark to be creative.
So tell us what you have coming up in the future.
So there's a couple cool pieces that are getting ready to come out. I did an album cover for a band. I'm not going to tell their name, and I'm just going to describe it. Eventually when I can show it, I will. What was cool about it is it's a heavy metal band, and they did the theme was that all the songs were about different serial killers. And so the cover art reflects all the different serial killers in one scene, and it's way darker than your usual Goosebumps, and there's a lot of specific serial killers would leave specific things behind. So all those little things are hidden around the room, and then there's a woman hanging, who's hiding under the bed, and there's somebody with who's breaking in through the window. Very cool piece.
That sounds incredible.
And then I just finished another one for R.L. Stine. Just wrote a graphic novel for the older market. So again, we got a little darker, and that piece should be out in the probably in the fall. So best place to find. I always post that stuff on Instagram. Just search Tim Jacobus. I think it's like Tim Jacobus 1 or something like that. Or search original Goosebumps Illustrator. That's my hashtag that pops into everything. That's the best place to find everything. The only other thing that I'll push is my website. It's called Jacobus Studios, and at Jacobus Studios you can buy prints of the original Goosebumps as posters. I'm sorry, guys, it probably won't work great for you. You got to live in the U.S. The prices to ship it international make it not worthy.
Honestly, we're used to that struggle.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, then contact me on the side. But the nice thing about it is it's the prints in the U.S. are free shipping, but and the prices are either $25 for an 18 by 18 or $20 for a 9 by 9.
God damn.
But $10
like...
from every sale goes to the purchase of food for the food bank down the street. And I don't give them the money. Me and my kid actually go to the store and buy the food and load it in the truck and take it down the street.
That's really great for you. So everyone definitely go out and get some pieces here.
We started it during the pandemic when everybody got scared, and then I did okay. I didn't lose my job and everything kept going. And then you start to see a lot of other people struggling, and it was something that we could do. And, as you guys are, perfect examples of it. You guys are way cool. And, plenty of people have been buying them. And, we've been able to we're not making a big difference, but we can all feel good at the end of the month when you see the picture of my pickup truck with boxes full of food in it that are going down the street. So
that's awesome.
Very commendable. That is awesome. Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, I think this is the last chance to say anything. Cody, you want to get his social insurance number or anything like that?
If you have that on hand, Tim, we'd love that. Your credit card info, the numbers in the back.
All right.
I actually just framed the original sketch I got from you as well. That's sitting in the at work as well with all the other paintings. But yeah, the I can agree with the postage. Especially in Australia, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that pains me so much that that you have to do that. It's way less than the cost of the actual art or print. But thanks for.
It's absolutely worth it though, 100% worth it.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and once again, thanks again, Tim Jacobus, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tim.
This incredibly fun.
I'm gonna have a hard time. My ego just got blown out of proportion. I'm gonna have a hard time for the rest of the
ride that, King. All right. We will see you guys all next time on the Terror Table.